is Radio Caravan, the world news read by Shabnam Modgil. Despite entreaties to stay away, President Trump heads to Kenosha, Wisconsin today to highlight his law and order campaign theme in a city upended by protests after the shooting of a black man by a white police officer. There's no question Joseph Rosenbaum, 36 years old, and Anthony Huber, 26 years old, are dead, fatally shot during a chaotic night in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And there's little question they were killed by Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old from Illinois who traveled to Kenosha. During a White House news conference yesterday, President Trump suggested that the 17-year-old accused of killing these two people with a semi-automatic rifle at this protest in Kenosha was an act of self-defense. Violence erupted last week in Kenosha after Jacob Blake was shot in the back by police. The mayhem followed a familiar pattern, with daytime protests devolving into nighttime looting and arson. 102 out of the 175 people arrested in Kenosha since protests began over the shooting of Jacob Blake were not from the city, according to the Wall Street Journal. Claiming the mantle of the law and order candidate, President Trump is offering himself as the leader best positioned to keep Americans safe, a day after Democratic rival Joe Biden assailed him over the deadly protests that have sprung up on his watch. Police used chemical irritants to disperse protesters from streets around the White House yesterday, as President Trump claimed that Democrats had lost control over the Black Lives Matter movement. Protesters gathered in South Los Angeles last night after sheriff's deputies shot and killed a black man who they said had a handgun and was fighting with them. 4 sailors jumped from their twin-propeller E-2C Hawkeye aircraft before it crashed in Accomack County in Virginia, according to a Navy official. And in his first strategic message to the Air Force, Chief of Staff General Charles Brown is pushing for radical changes, saying the service must rethink its internal structure to better align with how airmen deploy around the world and ditch unnecessary or aging equipment that can't give airmen the advantage on the battlefield. The world is still recovering from the death of the Black Panther. Chadwick Boseman passed away last Friday after a fight against colon cancer, and now there's a petition to put up a statue of him in his hometown of Anderson in South Carolina. The backers say they wanted to replace a Confederate war statue in the town square that has been standing since 1902. Liberty University is opening an independent investigation into Jerry Falwell Jr.'s tenure as president, a wide-ranging inquiry that will include financial, real estate and legal matters. France's Benoit Paire has tested positive for the coronavirus and pulled out of the U.S. Open, which started yesterday. In this news out of New York. And Jared Kushner and U.S. officials visited a major airbase in the United Arab Emirates today, speaking to Emirati and American pilots on the tarmac near the advanced F-35 fighter jets that the UAE hopes to buy as it normalizes relations with Israel. The visit to Al Dhafra airbase by President Trump's son-in-law came just before the El Al flight that had brought the U.S.-Israeli delegation to Abu Dhabi was to depart. Gaza's Hamas rulers said they have reached an agreement through international mediators to end the latest round of cross-border violence with Israel. But a Syrian Defense Ministry official said Israel's military fired missiles last night on areas south of the capital of Damascus, killing 2 soldiers, wounding 7 and causing material damage. The signatories to the faltering Iran nuclear deal kicked off a meeting in Vienna today as the United States is bidding to restore international sanctions on the Islamic Republic and extend an arms embargo. Taliban insurgents launched a complex attack today against a military base in eastern Afghanistan, killing at least 3 public protection forces and 5 others were wounded. The Taliban have rejected Western objections to a prisoner swap of militant fighters who killed international troops, saying Afghanistan's international backers should not interfere. Plans to free convicted Taliban fighters who killed French and Australian nationals as part of a trust-building swap to usher in peace talks have caused anger in Paris and Canberra. Saudi Arabia's top military commander in its years-long war in Yemen and his prince son have been removed from their posts along with other officials as part of an anti-corruption investigation. And Lebanon's under-fire leaders designated a new prime minister, Mustafa Adib, to tackle the country's deep political and economic crisis, hours before French President Emmanuel Macron was due to visit. French President planted a cedar tree in a forest north of Beirut, marking Lebanon's centenary today, ahead of talks with officials on ways to help extract the country from an unprecedented economic and financial crisis and the aftermath of a massive blast that left thousands dead or wounded. Saudi Arabia's King Salman has sacked 2 royals and referred them along with 4 military officers for investigation into corruption at the Defense Ministry in a royal decree issued early this morning and carried by state media. Turkish police have arrested Islamic State's top figure in Turkey along with plans for attacks by the militant group. Greece voiced hope today that the threat of sanctions from its European Union partners would convince Turkey to stop its offshore energy prospecting in contested eastern Mediterranean waters, which has plunged the two regional rivals into their worst crisis since 1974. Belarusian authorities resumed detaining protesters in the capital of Minsk, where students took to the streets demanding the resignation of the country's authoritarian leader after an election the opposition denounced as rigged. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. Russia's tally of confirmed coronavirus cases surpassed 1 million today, as authorities reported 4,729 new cases. The head of the Czech Senate declared himself to be Taiwanese in a speech at Taiwan's parliament today, channeling later President John F. Kennedy's defiance of communism in Berlin in 1963, further riling Beijing. China, which claims democratic Taiwan as its own territory, has threatened to make Czech Senate Speaker pay a heavy price for visiting the island. The Czech Republic, like most countries, has no formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan. And police in Hong Kong used pepper spray and made several arrests as dozens of protesters gathered at a subway station to mark the anniversary of a violent clash last year that stirred accusations of police brutality during anti-government rallies. Chinese authorities have detained an Australian citizen working as a high-profile TV anchor as relations between the two countries deteriorate. Australia's foreign ministry said Cheng Lei, an anchor for Chinese broadcaster CGTN, was detained 2 weeks ago. Asserting that Beijing has been picking up fights right now virtually on every front of its interest, a top American diplomat said the United States' strategy to counter it is to push back against China in every domain. The U.S. will push back against China's aggressive actions, including its outsized territorial claims on the border with India, even as it eyes the possibility of formalizing the quadrilateral security dialogue as an alliance. Beijing today blamed India for the latest bout of tensions along the line of actual control in Ladakh, saying China has never occupied an inch of territory belonging to another country, and New Delhi should take its concerns seriously and contribute to peace and tranquility at the border. Indian troops have captured an important Chinese military post after allegedly fighting off an attempt by the People's Liberation Army to occupy further Indian territory in the disputed border region of Ladakh. Despite the presence of cameras and surveillance equipment deployed by the Chinese army near the height close to the Pangong Lake southern bank, the Indian Army troops managed to occupy it before the People's Liberation Army. The situation in East Ladakh continues to remain tense, with the Indian Army matching the heavy weapon posturing of the People's Liberation Army today after preempting China from moving into the dominating heights south of the Pangsong Tso. Former President Pranab Mukherjee's death is a heavy loss to Sino-India friendship, said China today, expressing deep condolences at the passing of the veteran Indian politician. Former President Pranab Mukherjee cremated with full state honours at the Lodi Road Electric Crematorium today. His son performed his last rites and his family and relatives paid their last respects. An army contingent gave a guard of honour and a gun salute to the former president. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President Venkaiah Naidu, Prime Minister Modi, chiefs of the three defence services and several leaders paid their last respects to the former President Pranab Mukherjee at his residence today. With over 69,000 people testing positive for coronavirus infections, India's COVID-19 tally has mounted to 3.6 million, while recovery surged, also pushing the recovery rate to 76.94%. India reported close to 2 million COVID-19 cases in this last month of August, the highest recorded in any country during any month since the outbreak of the pandemic. The third round of Sero survey in Delhi to identify people who have the antibodies to fight against the coronavirus disease is scheduled to begin today. The survey will be conducted to know the section of people who may have contracted COVID-19 and have already recovered from the disease without realizing it. The immersion of idols of Lord Ganesh, which in previous years used to be an elaborate affair at the end of the 10-day Ganapati festival, being conducted without any fanfare today in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 35,000 police personnel were deployed across Mumbai, and the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation also made arrangements for incident-free immersion of idols on this occasion. The confirmed cases in Pakistan of COVID-19, 296,329. and the reported deaths in Pakistan, 6,298. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif filed a petition in the Islamabad High Court accusing the Punjab government of politicizing his health issue as it takes up appeals against his conviction in Al-Azizia and Avonfield properties references today. The Islamabad High Court said it was giving the former Prime Minister a chance to surrender and appear before the court at the next hearing, which is scheduled for the 10th of September. And a major corruption scandal involving Lieutenant General Asim Salim Bajwa is gathering steam in Pakistan. He's a retired general who's now serving as the chairman of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and a special assistant to Prime Minister Imran Khan. And according to a report published on Fact Focus, his brothers, wife and 2 sons own a business empire which set up 99 companies in 4 countries, including a pizza franchise with 133 restaurants worth an estimated $39.9 million. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have in the news for you on this first day of September.